And this fall is a special opportunity for us to really engage them, show them we're here for them, we're here to support them, we're here to bring them together. We have a real opportunity, and this could really boost our programs, our standing in the community, what people think about us. You know, we're always saying people don't know all the great stuff that we're doing. Here it is, people. Here's our chance to let everybody know. Here's what we're doing. Here's what music education does for the students. Here's what our program does for the school, for the community. We really have an opportunity to do that right. So you need to be doing a lot of planning and being really thoughtful.
Windconductor.org. I'm really excited to sit down and talk a little bit with our next guest. Tim Hinton's been in the business for quite a while. He was a high school band director, now moved into composing and arranging, writing shows for marching band. And now one of his most recognizable features is his Marching Roundtable podcast, which a lot of you have already heard of, listened to, and I just wanted to bring him on because he has some guests lately that have been really addressing a lot of the issues that band directors are facing right now, and I just wanted to pick his brain. A lot of our podcasts lately have been dealing with the classroom aspect, and I wanted to kind of transition into the fall with marching band and getting that mindset going as well. So, Tim, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me here. I'm happy to talk with you.
Awesome. So as I mentioned, you were a high school band director for 10 years. Tell us a little bit about your background briefly, and then I want to pick your brain a little bit about marching band in the fall.
Sure. Well, I mean, I grew up as a musician in the band, playing piano as well. Marched 3 years of drum corps with the Phantom Regiment. I went to the University of Tennessee, where I loved being in the band there as well.
Nice.
Taught for 10 years, and then I sort of burned out. That's a story that you hear sometimes. But found myself, I had been doing the whole time, I had been doing arranging. So since that time, for the last 27 years, I've been writing arrangements and compositions for marching bands and some concert band things, designing shows, helping write drills, the whole process. So I've been involved in all of that for a really long time, really my whole career.
Yeah.
And then about 10 years ago, we started the Marching Rountable Podcast. Friends and I were sort of sitting around complaining about we didn't like the way that, the direction the things were going. We didn't like the way the shows were and all this. And we finally decided, well, maybe we should just do something to help rather than just sitting around and complaining. So we started the podcast. We're now about to release, we're running close to podcast number 900. So we've been doing it a really long time, 2 a week. You can find them at marchingroundtable.com. And then 3 years ago, we expanded that sort of educational work into webinars. So at marchingartseducation.com, you can find live webinars, videos, interviews, sort of video component of the podcast world.
Awesome. Very cool. So, as I mentioned, this time of year, band directors, most band directors have already picked out the show they've started, or the show that they were hoping to march this fall. They are looking at this time at trying to figure out 8th grade recruitment. They're looking at leadership auditions. And that's kind of why I wanted to bring you on, because you've been addressing this a lot in your podcast lately. And I just wanted to kind of pick your brain a little bit. So I guess maybe just tackling some of those issues individually. Let's talk about student leadership and what that looks like while schools are closed now and auditioning them for the future. What's some of the advice that you've gotten from some of the directors that you're working with?
Well, all of this stuff is having to go virtual.
Right.
So we're all sort of suddenly scrambling to figure out how can we do this without being in the same place with the students. So student leadership, certainly, that also is like color guard auditions, drumline auditions, all those things that we typically do this time of year. We're having to figure out a new way to do it. So people are doing it online. They're having Zoom meetings, or they're having through social media. They're contacting students. And the thing here that I would want to remind everybody is students are not uncomfortable with this.
Right.
They are perfectly comfortable in front of their cameras and on camera and interacting in this way. But us old dogs, if I may say, we're the ones that are sort of freaked out and uncomfortable. And how does this work? And I don't know how to. But so you have to remember, the students are not that upset about this. They can film themselves doing a color guard routine as an audition, and they're going to be fine.
Right.
We have to figure out how to make that work for us. So that would be the first thing I would do, is just everybody take a deep breath, because the students are not that uncomfortable
Yeah.
as we
And
sort of
that,
feel like we are.
yeah, and that's a good point because, I, if I were faced with this right now in the classroom, I'd be freaking out right now. But you make a great point, because these kids have grown up in a society where they no longer call their friends on the phone. They are FaceTiming, or they're Instagramming one another, texting and stuff like that. The video chat is a integral part of their being as in today's youth. So that's a great point.
And obviously, it's better if we can all be in person. But the point is, you can get all this stuff done. We can all get this stuff done. And the other thing that great advice I've heard from people saying, especially since you're talking about leadership, is once you sort of know who your leadership team is, they can do a lot of this for us. There's all these social media connections that they have, where if you have your trumpet section leader make contact on social media with those upcoming, prospective members, that's really, really powerful. They can create these sort of threads of conversation, and that makes that young prospective member feel just as comfortable, maybe more comfortable, as if they were in the room. When you
Yeah.
think about it, these eighth graders walk in, here's all these giant seniors, and they're like, am I going to go talk to them? But they're comfortable doing that on their device.
Right.
So there's actually an opportunity here for us to sort of shift this paradigm really for all time, and start to use these tools that we have online. We just have to figure out how to do it. But a lot of people are having great success. I think some people are going to have better recruiting classes by instituting these things than they might have otherwise.
Yeah. And I've heard this come up a lot in the discussions I've had with different directors all over the U.S. And I'm excited to see how this time period in band education is going to impact the career for from this point forward, because there's a lot of us old guys that would have never taken the time to dig into figure out the social media aspect, or the video conferencing, or Instagram, TikTok, those types of things. And what I'm seeing now is those quote unquote younger social media platforms are being now integrated into music education in so many different ways. My daughter is a sophomore at Virginia Tech, marches in the band, and she's a music ed major. And she was telling me that she's got a younger professor, one of the musicology professors, and they are doing music terms right now, and she's submitting TikTok videos of what those musical terms look like in her classroom, which I thought was just genius. Which, an old guy, we would have never really considered that. So I honestly think that what we're experiencing is the next evolution of the band classroom, and not that that is going to replace the rehearsal setting in any I mean, nobody's even considering that, but I'm excited to see the positive impact that all this makes in the
Let
profession.
me give you an example of that, because this was something great. I had this wonderful webinar the other night with Michael Gaines and Michael Rosales and Elliot Cleveland. Really, really smart, talented people, did very
Yeah.
tough activity. Here's a suggestion Michael Rosales he made this example. He said, those kids in your band already will do 100 takes on video learning some TikTok dance routine
Right.
to post for their students, and they'll do it over and over and over until they get it exactly right to share it. Well, why not have them do that for 16 counts of flag work, or a 16 count trumpet phrase? Have them practice it over and over and over until they get one that they want to share.
Yeah.
That's like gold, because they're motivated to get it exactly right before they share it with everybody. I mean, they're going
Yeah.
to be practicing it over and over. This is a tool we haven't been taking advantage of, that again, the students are completely comfortable doing this.
That's all. Yeah, most definitely. I totally agree. I was talking with the guy I taught with up in Virginia. Was an orchestra director. He was a young guy. He came out of college, went to Ohio State, and was like one of those new teachers that taught like he had been teaching for 7 or 8 years. I mean, he was just really talented. But he was talking about that same thing with he was integrating the video testing with his kids using the Google Classroom. And it was amazing to see how, those kids, you only saw one video, but you guarantee that those kids were going home and practicing the crap out of those things.
Yeah, and I used to do this when I was a band director a million years ago on like, cassette tapes.
Right.
Everybody had to turn one in with them playing an excerpt, but it was the same concept. Even back then, they're doing multiple rehearsals until they get one they want to share. Now it's just all on video, but it's the same concept and it still works. And we
Yeah.
should have been doing it all along.
Right. Yeah, most definitely. So, what are some of the tips? We kind of dug into leadership and stuff like that, but have you heard any good tips as far as the eighth grade recruiting aspect of the program, or have you delved into that with the Roundtable?
Yeah, I mean, people are talking about all of these things they're trying
Yeah.
to do. And the recruiting is something people are very, very concerned about. In fact, on the day we're recording this, there is a live webinar tonight at our site at Marching Arts Education about auditioning and recruiting. So
Okay.
those materials are there. And if I'm assuming people are going to see this later,
Yeah.
go to the site and just look for that. You will be able to find there's resources out there. I just mentioned that because there are people out there helping and giving you suggestions. So you're not wandering through this wilderness by yourself, whoever you happen to be.
Yeah.
But again, I think the best thing with recruiting is people are doing virtual meetings. Instead of a meeting where all the students are going to show up with their parents, we're all doing it online, but it's still a way to engage, just like right now, that you can have those conversations. And the other thing that I would really mention is the leadership part. Have your student leaders make those connections with the prospective members, and that's really, really powerful.
Yeah, most definitely. So let's dig into that a little bit, because it is a great resource, and I'm going to share my screen with everybody just so that they can see this. But you've got the Marching Roundtable is that podcast that you were telling us about there. So tell us a little bit about this podcast and what they can find here.
Sure. Well, the podcast is just a resource where, everybody, the podcasts are very big right now. We've been doing it for almost 10 years now, and you can find something on almost any topic. What I would recommend you do is put a word into the search bar that you're looking for. But there's everything here about every single thing, from how to design a flag, to how to teach double tonguing, to how to teach breathing, to how to snare technique, how judges look at things, how you can design a show. Really, we talk about every single aspect, because our activity is very big. There's band and orchestra and color guard and drumline and indoor winds and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we realized pretty early on we were never going to run out of topics to talk about.
Yeah.
You go to our archives, you can see there's almost 900 webinar or podcasts that are there, and you can just find what's interesting to you. And there's something helpful for almost anybody.
Right.
Topic is what our goal is.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a tremendous resource, and it, the dedication that you put into this has been great. And I loved some of the things that you were presenting there. So in addition to that, tell us about the webinars and stuff like that. Where can we find that?
Sure, that's at the Marching Arts Education site. All of this is on one website. So if you get to marchingartseducation.com, which is what we're looking at right now, you can find the podcast. You can even find my music arrangements, which is the other work that I do. But again, this is the webinar component where some nights each week, there are live webinars that anybody can tune into and watch and learn from people. It's exciting there because on the webinars, you actually have live interaction. So you can ask questions. So if you're listening to someone talk about a topic, it's not passive, but you can type in and say, wait a minute, I didn't understand that. Could you ask them this? Sometimes we can even turn on your mic and you can ask them one-on-one. So it gives you access to these really top professionals in the marching arts activity. And those are going on all the time. So there's, those live webinars. There's also a color guard component of this. Courtney Allison Mills does Color Guard EDU, which is sort of the color guard component of this whole live webinar aspect. And again, almost any topic you can think of. Topics that are really popular on the webinars, on all the topics, are things like building your band culture. Everybody wants to know, why is that band over here or that color guard over here so incredibly, why do they have this culture of excellence that happens year after year after year? We talk about that a lot, and people are willing to share, this is what I do. And that's what I love. The best thing about all of this is these really top people they're not holding their cards close. Like, they're happy to tell you, this is how I do it.
Yeah.
Very top of the activity, they'll say, this is how I do it, because they know what they all say is, I don't want everybody to make all those mistakes I made, which I love. Their heart's really in the right place. They're all very generous with their time and their talents, and and sharing that with all of us. So it's sort of heartwarming that they're always ready to help and willing to share.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I've since I've been doing this with Wind Conductor, I've been amazed at how open directors are with talking about their program and giving us a peek inside their band room a little bit, to opening up to see what they're doing, how they're doing it, and stuff like that. And there's been so many great little nuggets that they pass down. And the beautiful thing about this is you can't replicate another band program.
Right.
However, you can always glean some great information from those directors that apply to your students and your time at that point. And
every single time. I
yeah,
don't think you're ever going to listen to a podcast, watch a webinar. You're going to take away something that's going to be helpful to you. And I like to say, I think for a lot of people, one really great idea could completely transform their program.
yeah,
And so I feel like we're trying to offer as many ideas as we can. What fits for you? But I guarantee if you watch a webinar or listen to a podcast, you're going to go like, oh, wow, I can do that. I see how that could apply to me. So
yeah.
sometimes we're like, how are they doing that? Well, they're happy to tell you. And then you'll go like, oh, that's a really good idea. I could totally do that. Maybe I should send my seniors to the middle school band concert.
Right.
A webinar where somebody talks about how they do that. And the middle school director comes to his concerts and is the announcer. And the high school director goes to the middle school concerts and he announces there, and they get to see him, and it's all one big band family. And when you hear that kind of thing, you're like, that makes perfect sense. But then you think, but I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
So those kinds of conversations are on these websites. And I love sharing those because, like I said, even one of those ideas could transform a program.
Right. Yeah. No, you're totally right. And so in addition to this, you do some writing, you do some composing and stuff like that. Are you still doing that stuff on a regular basis? Are you doing custom shows, or can people contact you?
Absolutely. It's timhinton.com, or again, it's on that same website. You can find my music site there. I've been doing that for 27 years. I've been writing custom arrangements because I was writing for my own band when I had my own band, and then realized, I could do this full time, and it's been wonderful. It's really fun to get to sort of hopefully set students up for success, give them something they're going to really enjoy, they can learn from, that audiences will like. So I feel like I'm trying to impact a lot of those people. I do less of it now because I've been so ensconced in all this educational work now, is that I've cut back on the amount of arrangements and drill writing that I do, but I'm still very involved in that part of the process and try to pay attention so I can facilitate conversations about it all the better. Yeah, and one of the reasons that we wanted to talk today is because this fall is not going to be a typical fall.
Yeah.
So that's the other reason that we're having so many conversations about that right now on the podcast and on the webinars, because a lot of people are very worried about what it's going to be like. So I don't know how much you want to talk about that at all, but I do think that there's going to be an unusual fall.
Yeah, and it's so up in the air right now. I mean, nobody knows what to expect in August, September, October, November. I mean, you've got everybody from professional sports to college sports trying to figure out whether they're going to have a football season. And if any one of those organizations decides to make a change, it's going to have a trickle-down effect to everybody throughout the whole profession. Whether you're a college band director or a high school band director, it's going to have an impact. So what are some of the things that you've heard through the grapevine, and what are some of the things that other directors are thinking about moving into that?
Well, the main thing is we don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. I don't know if I've ever had a time in my life where the uncertainty is, well, what's it going to be like in the fall? We don't know. We don't have any idea.
Yeah.
So one thing we know is it's not going to be a normal fall. So if we can all just sort of accept that. But the main thing we're telling everybody, and the main conversations that the top people are having, is they're planning for all these what ifs, right? So we're telling people, you have a May plan, have a June plan, have a July plan, have an August plan. In other words, you need to spend time with your staff and your team and figure out, okay, if this is how it goes, what are we going to do? Yeah. And I can tell you, for me, it calms me down because I know, okay, I have a plan. If we can't have band camp at all till August, all right, here's what we're going to do. And, and people are planning really meticulously and planning like, okay, this is what we're going to do if this happens. People are designing their shows to be flexible. But let's figure out how we can stop the show at the end of the second tune. If we just find out that our rehearsal time is cut or our season is short or whatever, a lot of people are changing the shows that they're doing because of the situation that we're in. So what people are doing is planning. And I had a band director contact me after one of our webinars recently, and he said, I really was glad that I've watched this whole webinar about how we're designing and planning for the fall, because I feel calmer now. I know I can figure out a plan.
Yeah.
So, for example, a lot of people are talking about not bringing out 1,000 props and expensive costumes and everything. Like, we're going through this very difficult time. People are out of work, they're struggling.
Yeah.
We want to come show off our riches on the field. So people are toning it down, maybe not using all those moving props, maybe not getting special shirts. Like, I think that's really smart. I have a lot of clients that are changing their show because they want to make sure that there's something positive and uplifting and crowd friendly.
Yeah.
Bring in front of their crowds. This is not the year for that apocalypse show. That
no. And I'm glad you said that, you know, especially coming from a voice within the marching community, because you know, we stand at a point in the performance area where we can have a huge positive impact in the reunification of people. Yes. As people are coming together. And, you know, if you want a band reference, go back and read about Patrick Gilmore and what he did after the Civil War with those huge band concerts, bringing the communities together, reuniting the country. You know, we're suffering in a lot of ways, a lot like what you would see in those really bad times where people are separated. And I'm hoping and praying that it'll be a kind of a revival for people getting out and seeing live performances, seeing marching band shows, and going out to and supporting the community in those ways as a way to come together. And I think you're so right. I think the repertoire that we're choosing for the fall needs to be reflective of that positive attitude, the coming together, the bright light at the end of the tunnel. You know, we need to be that bright light that people see at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, we have a responsibility and a huge opportunity to really have an impact. And I think we have to do it.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm telling people, this is the year to wear your school colors proudly.
Right.
And go out there and play something that's going to make the crowd feel good and bring them together. Like you said, we can do that. And I can tell you probably at least half of my clients have literally changed their show.
That's good.
And not everybody can do that, but still a lot of people are doing their show, but they're downsizing it. Maybe
right.
they're doing something simpler. And again, the other thing I would tell people is just make sure you plan for all these possible what ifs. It's possible. And there's watch the webinar called Designing for Safety this fall. Okay. I loved that at our website because we talked about, we're also worried about students. They're not going to be able, they're not going to be ready. You know, we're going to really try to engage them all summer, maybe really, really well with our virtual learning and stuff.
Yeah.
But still, they're not all going to be getting as much moving around and exercise. Who knows?
Right.
But we have to be careful. So planning for all these different ways that things might go, planning our shows smarter, planning simpler, thinking about our audiences and what our role is in this fall, whatever that happens to be. I think this is really serious and important stuff. And I'm glad that people are really thinking about it.
Yeah. And there's ways to kind of plan around that. Going back to what you said, not everybody may be able to do a complete 180 on their show, right. But there's ways to integrate that positivity. And just going back to when I was in the classroom teaching band, I remember the last couple years, one of the things that I did was after we marched our competition show at halftime, you know, that was our time to get it in front. You've got to have that experience with your competitive show just to go through the process of running through it and all that other stuff. At the end of that, instead of having the kids immediately march off the field and go into huddle, I had them lining up on the track in front of the home stands. And then we played like 2 or 3 of the pop tunes that we play in the stand. I had the kids memorize those tunes, and we just blasted right facing the audience. And, you know, the kids were out there dancing as, you know, when the drum line was playing, they'd start dancing and stuff like that. I can't tell you, I had people I had never met before once I started doing that, coming up and telling me, that's the best I've ever heard the band play. And we had just done like this great
Right.
show on the field with no compliments about that, but they loved that interaction. And that's something that anybody can kind of, if you're in that situation where you can't do that 180 on with what you've chosen, find ways that you can communicate with your audience.
And, one of the main things that people say on webinars, we're talking about building that culture and building visibility in your community, and one of the things that somebody said, really smart, said on one of the conversations was, you're always recruiting.
Yeah.
Even if you're at the store and you see somebody and they know that you're that high school band director or whatever, you're always recruiting, because they might have a student that's going to be in your band one day or considering it. But the same thing is true here. We are always addressing what the community thinks of us. And this fall is a special opportunity for us to really engage them, show them we're here for them. We're here to support them. We're here to bring them together. We have a real opportunity, and this could really boost our programs, our standing in the community, what people think about us. We're always saying people don't know all the great stuff that we're doing. Here it is, people. Here's our chance to let everybody know. Here's what we're doing. Here's what music education does for the students. Here's what our program does for the school, for the community. We really have an opportunity to do that right. So you need to be doing a lot of planning and being really thoughtful.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, great advice. I really appreciate you coming and just sharing some insights and gleaning some from your experiences and also from the advice that you've gotten from the directors that you talked to. And one of the things that I did notice on there that we didn't talk about, but I did want to hit before we head out today, you got a great resource for if a band director is new to the profession or fresh out of college, or maybe they're going through a program in college where they don't have the marching band methods. You've got a great resource on your site, and we scrolled by it earlier, but I'm going to share my screen again. The dynamic marching band method. Tell us about that, because you and I were talking about that earlier in the pre-show call, and I was really impressed by what you have there. So tell us what is there and what the purpose of that is.
Right. Well, one of the most daunting things that any student has as they're going out to be a band director is they have to, usually right as they start their career, they're going to have to produce a marching band show, run it, make it work, work with the parents, have band camp. There's all these giant tests, and it's very intimidating, and it's really hard to know all of it, or even know enough to survive it, I might say.
Right.
So there is a course that most college students take in their final year of college called a Marching Band Methods course. Wayne Markworth wrote a book called The Dynamic Marching Band, and he teaches a marching methods course at Wright State University. So we created an online version of that because there's a lot of college students who either don't have access at all to a marching band methods course, or they're not required to take it and they tend to skip it. Right. And so I'm terrified for these guys to go out and suddenly that first fall, they've got to know all this stuff. So there's a resource for them, and also for anybody that's a new teacher or has been teaching a long time. It talks about all the aspects of teaching winds, percussion, color guard, recruiting, band camp, working with boosters, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a really great resource, and I appreciate Wayne working with me to make that available. Again, if you go to the Marching Arts Education website, you will find that, the Dynamic Marching Band. There's the book available, and then the online course.
That's awesome. It's a great resource. I was impressed because, there are those schools that don't have that program in their curriculum. Maybe they're following some type of conservatory method or whatever. And if you aren't exposed to that, or maybe you went to a college that doesn't have a marching band program, and there's some phenomenal music schools out there that don't have marching band, it's a great resource for you to kind of delve in. If you've not been in marching band since you were in high school, you maybe want to get a little bit of a refresher course there. Tell us again, where can we find you? What's the best way that people can find the podcast, the webinars, and your music?
Yeah, and it's all just the name of what it is. So the Marching Roundtable Podcast, you go to marchingrountable.com. Marching Arts Education is marchingartseducation.com. And my music is at timhinton.com, my name. And all of that is on one site together. So if you get to one of those, you'll find the others. They're all there on the same website. And again, my mission is sort of try to facilitate helping people learn things, find what they need to do better, help their students do better, have their students have a better experience. I feel really fortunate to get to do this work, to get to have these conversations with all these incredibly smart people, and learn about what they do. And I have a whole team now that are helping me, that work with me to help facilitate these webinars. And I'm thankful for them and for everybody that's come on to talk to us. So hopefully if people go to the sites and they check out some of that other information that's there, they'll find it helpful, and they can send their staff there. They can even send their students there. There's interviews about DCI shows with those designers, instructors. So there's something there for almost everybody's interest.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Tim, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.